Did you know that Evangelion essentially started with a bunch of uni friends in a fan club? Yeah, these guys' fan animations were so successful, they became a billion-dollar studio and somehow, with enough incompetence over time, just went bankrupt last year. In the 1980s, Hideki Anno and his group of friends were just a bunch of animation nerds chilling in college. They simply liked animating random stuff and went under the name Daikon Films. This literally means radish films. In 1981, they made a 5-minute short featuring a young girl fighting famous kaiju and mechas, and 2 years later, they made a sequel, except said girl was in a bunny suit, surfing on a sword with copyrighted music in the background. What the fuck? Disregarding the absurdness, from a technical perspective, the film was insanely well animated for its time, so much so that it blew up in doujin circles and got everyone talking about it. They couldn't commercially release this film because everything they used was copyrighted, but this fame was all the encouragement they needed to found a studio, Gainax. Gainax at its core was a group of otaku who loved animation, so naturally, they wanted high quality works, and weren't exactly the brightest with money. Their first work, Royal Space Force, was a critically acclaimed film, but the insanely high budget, 800 million yen, made the final result a loss. They expanded into TV anime and ONA and would face the same problem time and again. Their product was amazing and people loved them, but they used so much money that they could barely make a profit. Eventually, Gainax realized they needed side ventures for money and made PC games and merch, which did pretty well, particularly a daughter-raising simulation, that's so wholesome by the way, and a bunch of risque strip mahjong games that kept their company alive. After a decade of fighting to stay alive, Gainax was very unstable. They had ventures in several industries, but nothing made big money or was very stable. Eventually, the company went under some internal shakeups and several of the initial founders left to form a new studio, Gonzo. At this point, Gainax was falling apart. They had planned a sequel to one of their series, Wings of Hanamai's, but literally couldn't finish it due to a lack of funding, which left the studio directionless and Hideki Anno in a slump. Anno fell into depression. He had dreams for the studio, but just did not know what to do. It seemed hopeless, but somehow an opportunity struck out of nowhere. Anno was out drinking with King Records producer Toshimichi Otsuki when Otsuki gave the offer of a lifetime. King Records would fund a new anime project, something, anything, and guarantee a TV airtime slot for it. With this, Anno and Gainax went ambitious. So big, in fact, that they had to collaborate with another studio, Tatsunoko Production, and started working on an original 26-episode anime, Neon Genesis Evangelion. The rest is history. Neon Genesis Evangelion became a galactic-wide phenomenon. The mech battles, the trauma, the controversial ending, the memes. The franchise was said to have made 150 billion yen in only its first few years. There is a reason you can find Ava merch of literally every single household item you can think of. And I'm pretty sure more Japanese people know A Cruel Angel's Thesis than the national anthem. For Gainax, a company that had been fighting tooth and nail to stay alive, this was unprecedented, is what I would say if the studio wasn't just a tiny part of the production committee, hence receiving little of that money. Thankfully, Ava was so popular that the production committee saw a long future for it, so they did decide to shift more Ava merchandise/licensing revenue directly to Gainax as the rights holder, which meant that Gainax actually started receiving a steady stream of income from Ava-themed goods and media. This sounded amazing on paper, and it was at the time, but this would become the breeding grounds for incompetence. The first problem came up pretty quickly. After the big money was made, in 1998, tax authorities found 560 million yen of taxes evaded. Apparently, they were literally withdrawing all this money and hiding it as cash. This was a crime and got the president and accountant of Gainax arrested. The accountant got sent to prison while the president resigned in disgrace. This was a huge reputation damage to Gainax, but one account of tax fraud was only the beginning of their problems. The company had gotten complacent. People kept wasting money for no reason. Management kept doing extravagant stuff for some reason. The pay system was a mess. There were quite a few internal conflicts, and it just overall seemed like once they had gotten the Ava money flow, everyone's financial sense just disappeared. Not that they were good at it to begin with, but you know. Anno grew very frustrated with this, and even tried becoming a member of the board to try and reform the studio's practices, but to no avail. After trying for several years, in 2006, Anno eventually gave up and left the studio alongside a few of the core staff to found a new studio, Kara. The problem was that Anno was the director and writer of Ava, which means while the rights to the Ava series stayed with Gainax, Gainax would not be getting money from any future sequels. Okay, copyright law is complicated. We'll get more into that later. Kara would go on to produce the rebuild of Evangelion film series independently, while Gainax needed to find a new stream of money before the Ava money dwindled. In the early 2000s, Gainax actually produced some pretty good works, like these on screen, but nothing that blew up like Ava. Perhaps motivated by the departure of Anno and their Ava rights, only 1 year later in 2007, Studio Gainax would produce another blockbuster anime, Gurren Lagann, a name known to this day. Gurren Lagann, again, grew to be one of those anime that influenced a generation of otaku. Gainax had struck gold a second time, and then a third in 2010 with Panty and Stalking, but this double victory was short-lived due to the constant leaving of talent. In 2007, one of the co-founders made some bad comments about fan criticisms regarding Gurren Lagann on the message board, which ignited backlash and led to his resignation. Then, for some reason, a bunch of super talented people just left together in 2010 after Panty and Stalking. Then, in 2011, a director and producer left to create Studio Trigger, and many veteran animators followed suit to Trigger that same year. There is no evidence for why, but I would presume the reason to be similar to why Anno left. Just so much internal conflicts with management and a terrible financial system. This mass emigration of talent left Gainax understaffed and their anime output dwindled. They made a few things like Medaka Box and a few short webcomics, but none of their works would ever blow up again. Nor did they have the manpower to make anything that big again. As the years went by, Gainax went into a downward spiral, starting with a lawsuit by none other than Kanas Anno. See, basically, after Kara took over working on the Evangelion franchise, an agreement was in place that while Gainax owned the rights to the original Eva IP and would be the studio making money from any merch or licensing, Gainax would have to pay Kara royalties for any income Gainax still earned from works Anno had directed, including Eva. This was okay, until Gainax, with its financial incompetence, started falling behind on payments and needed to take a loan, 100 million yen. They asked Kara for the loan. Anno actually agreed to this loan interest-free, but attached conditions, such as more rights to certain parts of the Ava franchise. What rights? I don't know, this IP is a mess. However, even with this bailout, Gainax still continuously failed to repay the money it owed, and after 2 years of waiting, Kara got fed up and sued Gainax for unpaid debt and royalty fees. The lawsuit only went on for 1 year before the court sided entirely on Kara's side and ordered Gainax to pay back the full amount. This lawsuit in the face of the public, Gainax's president issued a public apology and promised to restructure the company. I don't know how good of a job he did, but he passed down the title of president to another guy, Tomohiro Maki, in 2019, 2 years later, who was soon arrested for tricking a teenage voice actress into sending you-know-what photos, and went to prison for 2.5 years only? God damn it! Either way, this was the last straw. No one wanted to get close to them anymore. Even studios like Kana and Trigger had to make public statements that they were in no way affiliated with Gainax. This was it. Their reputation was in the sewers. They had mountains of debt and no manpower to make projects. No way to make back that money. In 2020, there was a last-ditch attempt to save Gainax by appointing a new board of directors, many of whom associated with Gainax's founders in that little friend group, just to to save the studio's legacy. They tried fixing some assets, selling some rights, but yeah, no, Gainax was doomed. They had amounted a debt of 380 million yen and no way to pay it back. In May 2024, a debt agency filed a lawsuit against Gainax for unpaid debt and it was over. They couldn't repay it and filed for bankruptcy after 4 decades in business. In its bankruptcy announcement, Gainax cited financial mismanagement decisions and substantial debt accumulation as the cause of its demise, which I'm glad you noticed 30 years later! After Gainax's bankruptcy, Kana acquired the Gainax trademark and stepped in to oversee the dispersal of Gainax's remaining intellectual properties to appropriate new owners, marking the end of everything Gainax had built up. In a way, the story of Gainax is like one of a lottery winner. They struck gold, thought they had it all, and kept spending away until there was nothing left. Okay, no, that's an understatement. Evangelion is possibly the most influential anime of all time. I'm telling you, the opening song is Japan's national anthem. And unlike most anime studios today, Gainax actually held some degree of rights to Eva. They got money from the merch and licensing. The amount of incompetence you need to flop this hard after making Japan's national anime is genuinely impressive. And don't even get me started on the literal crimes by management. Thankfully, the Eva series has successfully continued under Kana and Ano, even ending on a wonderful note. Despite its incompetence, the existence of Gainax gave birth to a plethora of classic anime and even incredible studios like Trigger, so it's hard to just bury everything they've done away. And I do genuinely feel bad for that original group of friends, group of animators who had to witness the studio they had built up together over the years crumble down like this. Let this tale be a lesson to never grow complacent, even if you think you've succeeded. And also don't commit tax fraud and do bad things with kids. I think that helps. I think. Special thanks to Vicente Pagani and all my other patrons and members for supporting the channel.